Welcome to another edition of Buc What Ya Heard. My name is Gene. You can reach me at Super Heavyweight. If you follow me, I'll follow you back. We're getting towards the back end of the football season, sadly. But the Bucs are winning 4 games in a row. Can you believe it?
Not
It
really.
looks like they finally found something that actually works, and they're sticking with it. And tonight I'm joined by my guests, Terra, who's my co-host. She missed her last week on a great show, but glad you're back. Terra, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at TERRALSP. My current name is Derek Carr is Christ because the Raiders refuse to lose. So that's been fun. I made a bet back when the Bucs played the Raiders nearly 6 weeks ago, and the Raiders have not lost since. So great for that. Also, if you want to check it out on my Twitter account, my pinned tweet right now is this short video I created for class, basically detailing some of the Bucs history through what the fans had to say. And I used myself because it's hard to find fans in Arizona. And so, yeah, you'll see a lot of me. You'll see some other people. My dad's in it too, who's been a fan since like the 80s. So it's really cool to hear what they have to say and just explain the pain that they've had as a Bucs fan. So that's all I got for right now.
All right. Michael Pless, welcome back, man. Glad to have you on. Tell everybody how they can get a hold of you.
Yes, you can follow us at Real Bucs Talk. If you want, you can also follow me at Michael Pless if you want to, ask me personal questions about the Bucs. But I'm usually on Real Bucs Talk Twitter handle, and we love talking Bucs football. So hit us up anytime.
And folks, I really do like a Real Bucs Talk. I think it is something that Bucs fans, if you're new Bucs fans, it would be something I would really suggest checking out because his information is very in-depth. And you could talk to him. They do actually, his team does break down film, and they do talk in-depth about Bucs football. So let's get right into this. Let's talk about the San Diego Chargers. And everybody that's been following the Bucs would say that this was a very defining game. When you go back and you look at the Chicago Bears game and how dominant the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were against them, and then you had the games that followed that, and each game was a game. For example, the Kansas City Chiefs game, everybody had pretty much written the Bucs off to lose that game because it was a home game for the Kansas City Chiefs, and the fact that they never lost there very often, and Tampa went in and did what they needed to do to win that game. Then you had the Seattle Seahawks, which is another team that's a very strong team and a team that you expect to see in the playoffs this year. So that's another team that everybody had pretty much written Tampa off on as well. Even though it was a home game and you hear stories about how injuries may have played a part, but the fact that Tampa went out there and they won these games. They went out and they handled that game and didn't focus on the next game, but they handled the game at hand, and they've gone on and they've proceeded to do that the last 4 games. Now, the nice thing is this game against San Diego was a game where you have Phillip Rivers, and we know how dangerous Phillip Rivers can be. And, we'll talk about that in depth in this game, but we already knew going in how dangerous Phillip Rivers could be. So you had Phillip Rivers and, that San Diego Chargers team, and Joey Bosa, who's emerging as a very big defensive presence. So for Tampa to be able to go in there and play the way they did in the second half, I thought that it was a testament to coaching and players buying into the system and everybody playing as a team. So we're going to try something different this week. And Terra, I kind of talked with you prior to the show, but I want to get your thoughts on the first half of the game and what you saw from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And we'll start on offense.
Well, on offense, I saw what we've been seeing the last few weeks. We have been able to move the ball well, been able to get into the red zone, and then kind of falter, I guess you could say, in the fact that you don't get a touchdown every drive, or not even as much as you should, which then puts the pressure back on Aguayo, which we know he doesn't need at this point. And even though he had a great couple of games, he kind of regressed in this last game against the Chargers, but I'm still holding out faith that he'll even it out, and hopefully we didn't waste a second-round pick on him. But, yeah, the offense was moving the ball well until you got into that 20-yard line, that 20 yards until the end zone. So that was the big issue for me. There was a poor throw by Winston that resulted in an interception, but he's been cutting back on those. So I'm not too worried about that. It's not that much of an issue with me. It's going to happen. It's the second year, and even Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady can still make those throws at points. So I'm not completely concerned about that. Yeah, so the offense was good. It's the same issue as we've had the past 2 weeks, but again, we were able to overcome it as we have the past 2 weeks. So that was great. Defense, I'll move right on to that. Now this is a double-edged sword, but what I really liked and what I really saw from the defense was the fact that despite that Phillip Rivers had some time every now and then, he still wasn't throwing it deep, which means that the secondary was doing its job. It was making sure those deep passes weren't being allowed, which was a great sign. However, should Rivers have had that time? Not so much, but that evened out, I think, as the game progressed. They were able to adapt. I'll let Michael talk more about the second half, but they were able to adapt. And then the other downside of that, though, was the fact that when Rivers had to revert to his, 3-yard passes, those 3-yard passes turned into 15-yard gains. It wasn't necessarily always a lack of tackling, but a lack of defender in the area, which is understandable because you're not really going to always guard that running back who comes off a block and into that 2-yard zone. But they also shouldn't be getting a first down off of that. So those are my big takeaways on both the offense and defense when it came to the first half of this game.
Okay. And what did you think of the San Diego running game? How do you think that Tampa handled that running game?
Well, Melvin Gordon's a good running back. I know he's had some issues here and there, but I've always been a firm believer in Melvin Gordon. And the running game got off to a fast start for San Diego, which could be a bit concerning, but that is a high-powered offense. There's so many weapons. I wasn't too worried with the running game. I was willing to accept that he was going to burst out some 15-yarders here and there, but we were able to contain him for most of the game. So I wasn't too worried with the running game. But, yeah, I like Melvin Gordon as running back. So knowing that we were able to hold him back was very nice.
All right. So, Mike, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the second half. We'll talk more about this in depth, but I just wanted to kind of get your overview on the second half and what you saw.
Yeah, I mean, the second half was just a game of adjustments. I think the defense, they made a really good adjustment of taking that short passing game away from Phillip Rivers. They were able to get into his face a little bit more. And then you look at the Levante David interception, that's probably the turning point of the game. Able to get that pick six. So that was huge. Let's see. And then offensively, again, this goes back to the red zone. They finally were able to put one in the red zone with Cameron Brate. But, overall, I think it was they just played better as a team. You outscored San Diego 21-7 in the second half. So the defense kind of clamped down. They got more pressure on Phillip Rivers and were able to make plays. And, that's what won them the game.
All right. And that's kind of what I saw. And I guess for me, you kind of stole my thunder a little bit, Michael, but it was a game of adjustments. And what I saw in this particular game, it's an away game, and the crowd was crazy enough. The Bucaholics, and I think I talked about them last week, they were just as loud and wild as they could be. And, you can hear that. And, they've continually gotten props for, being that loud crowd, and making a difference. But Tampa was able to make adjustments. We haven't seen that for a long time. And that's something that I was very excited about, is the fact that they could go in, they saw what was happening, and they were able to correct things and come out and play better in the second half, which is what you expect from your team on a regular basis. But it's good for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to see this, because we can go back to Greg Schiano and even Lovie Smith at times would just stick to his game plan instead of making adjustments in the second half, and you saw more of the same in the second half. So that's really exciting. Mm-hmm. And another thing that go ahead.
Just going to say, in this game, they weren't their best. I mean, overall, we probably could have played a lot better. I mean, the red zone, for instance, we had a lot of chances down there, had to settle for field goals. So that's one area we have to improve down the stretch. But, as far as, just finding a way to win, I thought that was very key. They just made plays. They made the big plays when they had to make them. Getting that Levante David interception, Vernon Hargraves, understanding what route's coming. He anticipates the ball well, gets his hand in there, knocks it out. Keith Candy being in the right position to make a play on that ball, get the key interception. And then our offense getting a big first down to basically, put the game away. So it's just finding ways to win. I think that's what this team is learning now, and it's just awesome to see.
Yeah. And another guy that I've been mentioning over and over and over again is Brian Angerer. And I feel like this guy is a weapon. The way he's putting the ball and pinning teams back, and you're having to work a little bit harder to get down the field, that has been huge for Tampa and the defense to pin their ears back at times and get after the quarterback. So it's something that's huge for us to have a punter like that. And I'm really excited about having him on the team.
Yeah, he might not be Marquette King, but we'll get him to that style point.
Oh, you can have him. I'm good with this guy. I would love to see him in the Pro Bowl. I think that he's done a good enough job. I don't know if I sound like a homer, or maybe I do, but he's somebody I think that what he's been able to do, I think he deserves some consideration for the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. Although hopefully he won't be able to go. Oh yeah.
What were you saying, Michael?
And he's our biggest free agent. We need to, lock him up.
Yeah, definitely. And another guy that's really having a good trend of games here is Noah Spence. He's getting more and more comfortable. The speed of the game is slowing down for him, and he's continually making plays. And what I like to do after a game is listen to the opposing team's sports radio. And one thing that I've noticed that Seattle and San Diego have both taken a lot of time to mention Noah Spence and how big of a factor he's been for this team. So that's something that I found to be really exciting, that we have a rookie that's coming in and contributing. And I know this is something we talk about every week, especially when I have Michael on, because we both really like what Jason Light has done with the draft over the past few years, and just seeing some of these players, especially rookies, who are able to go out and make plays and contribute to wins is really exciting. So that's something to really be happy about as well, that we're going to have these players for years into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a young team, and I haven't been able to be around for the Jason Light praise, but I wish I was, because I am complete agreement. And I liked the idea of keeping him while getting rid of Lovie Smith. I thought if we got rid of both of them, that would have been a huge mistake. I thought getting rid of Lovie Smith may have been the right move, and 2020 is kind of showing that at the moment, at least. But you just think of all the playmakers the Bucs have right now, and they're all young. It's Mike Evans, it's Jameis Winston, it's Noah Spence. You say Hargraves, he may not be like getting the interceptions every game, but there's not a lot of times where I'm like, oh, that was a rookie mistake by Hargraves right there. He should not have bit when he bit. There's not a lot of times where I'm like that during a game. And so you think of all the different playmakers for the Bucs, and most of them have been on the team only in the last 2 or 3 years. So, it's exciting to see the upwards trends because of Light's moves in the drafts and in free agencies, and mainly in the draft, though. So. Yeah,
absolutely. And, there have been several plays where there were sacks, and I can't really say on this game, but more so on the Seattle game, where there were coverage sacks, where the secondary was playing in their positions and they were locking down their players. And so you have a quarterback that can't do anything, and he has to take the sack. So I really feel like this defense is trending in the right direction. We did have the loss of Chris Conte, but the team still played good. So I'm again, it's another plus for this team, and you really are excited for what can possibly happen. And look, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in first; they're tied for first place with the Atlanta Falcons. So that's something that we haven't really got to talk about for a long time. That the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in this position, and they have a winning record. and not just one game over, but they're 7-5. That's exciting.
Yes, I mean, to be tied for first this late in the season, it's been a while. It's been a while.
Yeah, and for me, I picked, at the beginning of the season, I picked the Bucs to have 7 wins, and they've totally exceeded my expectations, and that's something even, again, that, that's an attribute to the team buying into the system, and that's the coaches doing what they're supposed to do. And it just seems like they've upgraded in so many positions in the offseason, and right now is where you can see where all these moves are paying off. I was somebody, and you can go back and look at my podcast, I was pissed when they fired Lovie Smith because I had been preaching consistency. You cannot build a team if you keep getting rid of coaches, because you get rid of coaches, you eventually get rid of players, and then you have to start all over again, and you're back to ground zero. So for what they've done right now, I think they've really done a great job. And the fact that we have a new defensive coordinator, a guy that's calling plays that was not here last year, and the defense is responding the way they have, it says a lot about this team as well. Would you not agree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hell yeah. Hell yeah. I mean, it's confidence. It's all about confidence. This team for the last, I don't know how long, it's been a decade, I would say. This team was for mentality. They weren't expecting to win games. They were hoping to win games. And now they're expecting to win. They're going into games expecting to win. And that does wonders for a team like this, especially a young team. And when you have confidence, I mean, once you start winning games and you build that confidence, I mean, sky's the limit. Let's talk about guys preparing for opportunities, not waiting for an opportunity. They're preparing for the opportunity. And, that's why I think guys that have come up into the lineup, next man up, I think it's been the best this year because guys are preparing the right way and they're of their next opportunity. I mean, it's awesome, but confidence is where it starts. Yeah,
and you have to look back at Jameis Winston as where this started. I've looked at this team. I've watched this team. The 2010 season, when they got the 10 wins, there were no veterans on this team. I believe there was an interview where Aqib Talib was talking about he never watched game film. He was playing on pure talent. That it just blows my mind. But then when you think about it, there was nobody there to really direct him. This is what you need to do. This is how you become a professional. And the fact that now we have a mixture of veterans, when with some of these young players, Robert Ayers, a Clint McDonald, a player like Gerald McCoy, just different players that are there to really guide this team in the right direction. And just imagine if you had that veteran presence back then. But what we have now is a great balance of young and veteran that's really working well for this team. And another thing to think about, too, is a lot of players are getting healthy, players that we didn't have when we were losing those games in the early part of the season. So that's another thing to look at. A Charles Sims. Imagine a Charles Sims, Jacquizz Rodgers, and Doug Martin are all back, and will be available for the game. So that's huge. And then you talk about a Josh Huff, who they've promoted from the practice squad, and then they brought him up to the team. So, man, there's a lot of pieces here. I know that we've lost a lot of pieces. What is it, 11 players on injured reserve at this point right now?
Mm-hmm. It's close to it.
That's crazy. Mm-hmm. That is crazy if you think about that, 11 players. And some of these players like a Vincent Jackson, Jacquizz Smith, just players like that you won't have this season. And this team is still able to stay competitive and hang into some of these games.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at – you brought up a couple wide receivers, but look at the wide receiving core itself. I mean, Humphreys looks like he might be back for the Saints, so that'll be very helpful. But Cecil Shorts went down, and you have, Huff coming in from him. Jackson went down early in the season. The only consistent wide receiver really has been Mike Evans. If you throw in tight ends, you have Cameron Brate, who's been, I think, a godsend. I'm a huge Cameron Brate fan. I'm glad he's been able to – I would say he's more than Austin Seferian-Jenkins was at this point because ASJ had an injury bug issue, which was a bit frustrating, but you can't really blame him for either. But I'm a huge fan of Cameron Brate. So Cameron Brate and Mike Evans have been carrying this receiving load, even though Brate isn't necessarily a wide receiver. So if you have that carousel of wide receivers and you're able to stay competitive and stay together, you have to, again, look to what you said in Jameis Winston and the leadership he's brought. Because, I mean, you listen to him speak to the locker room, you hear about some of the things he's done, like writing a letter to the players before the Kansas City game and things like that. You're like, where does this guy come up with these things, but not in a way that you're like, this guy's insane. No, that's what leadership is, because you're not sitting there thinking he's crazy. You're sitting there thinking, like, he knows how to get people ready. He knows how to get people motivated. And so I bring this all back to Jameis, especially since he's had that, again, carousel of wide receivers that he's had to go through. So, I mean, it's all astounding at this point. Everything that's brought us to being 7-5 has just completely amazed me, but that's one of the top things.
Yeah, most definitely. And I can remember our conversations prior to the season starting, and everybody was looking at our schedule, and they're like, man, this schedule, Tampa may get 4 wins.
Yeah, I was one of those people, man. 5 wins is what I predicted.
Yeah, and I started 10. I started 10, and I moved to 7 after watching the preseason. And I was just like, you kind of have to temper your expectations a little bit. And, I basically said that, any improvement is a lot of improvement. And to me, considering 6 wins last season was all the Bucs ended up with, and we're at 7, and there are, games left to be played. So I think that this team can vastly improve. I don't want to jinx them and talk about the playoffs, so I'm not going to bring that up. But, to me, this team is trending in the right direction. I keep saying that because it's just so exciting to see that. Mike, you have anything to add to that?
A quick thing on Robert Ayers. I think Ayers has probably been one of our most important free agent acquisitions, and I don't know, the last 10 years to this team. Just his leadership and his energy on the field, the way he fires up the defensive line. I don't know if you guys heard about how he really got into the team, after they lost to Atlanta. Pretty much just ripped the whole team, pretty much just say, hey, we can't allow this to happen. He pretty much said enough is enough. We got to be more accountable. We got to do our job and be responsible. After that, I mean, you saw in the Bears game, they just came out with like a fireball. I mean, it was just it's great to see. And unfortunately, he got hurt early in the season, week 2. I mean, who knows where this team could be if he was, healthy the whole season. So just to have that leadership and his ability not only to get after the quarterback, but probably one of the better signings we've had since Vincent Jackson, I would say.
Absolutely. And another guy that doesn't get enough credit, and I know that he's been maligned a lot of the season, was Brent Grimes. But when you look at this secondary and you compare this secondary to where we were last year, it's like night and day. I mean, last year every Sunday you were like, well, I wonder who's the cornerback going to be this Sunday, because we didn't know, because they were continually tinkering with the secondary instead of and as a secondary player, it takes repetition. You need reps to get in there and get comfortable. It takes a couple of games to get comfortable with a system, and the fact that you're taking a guy out and replacing him with this guy because you made a mistake. I mean, it messes with your psyche, because a D-back is supposed to have amnesia. You make a play or you miss on a play, you forget about it, and you just get yourself ready for the next play. So that's what Tampa did not have last season. And you see that this season where everything's locked in. These are your players. These are the guys that are going to come out there and play. And you've seen that every week, and that to me is very important as a defense.
Mm-hmm.
No,
yeah,
absolutely.
one quick thing on Jameis, just everything's so genuine with him. He's talking about family, and this team is becoming a family. I mean, everything is pretty much a brotherhood, and that's how it should be. And they're on on and off the field. They truly care about each other. And when you get that, I mean, you play for each other instead of playing selfish. And they're playing for each other, and that's huge. I mean, when you play complementary football, you're going to win a lot of games in this league. And he's just a great leader. I'm just so happy to have him on our team. It's one of the reasons me and my co-writer Mark went up there to see him get drafted in Chicago. So it was just awesome.
Yeah. And when you're talking about Jameis Winston, this is a guy that, you have these intangibles. And I have kind of gotten away from stats. I used to just spit stats out all the time. Last season, stats. And now there are so many things that you don't see that happen. I mean, you might see him talking to somebody on the sideline. He may be talking with a coach. Just everything that he does to improve his game. And that's what's important in being able to hone your craft and be a better quarterback and be a good leader. Because we didn't have this. And this is a culture change. And there's another one of those buzzwords that I was talking about. But it's actually very true. Because like you guys had both mentioned, last season it's like the Bucs were hoping to win. Now you've got their mindset to where they're expecting to win. And now the big key right now is to win at home. That's going to be huge. Any games that they can win at home, that's definitely going to help the fan base. That's going to energize the fan base and get them to supporting the team more. And it just snowballs from there. And I know you probably won't remember this, Terra, but in the early 90s when Tampa was really rolling, I mean, Raymond James Stadium you couldn't get a ticket. There is no way you're getting a ticket to a game unless you're in with a season ticket holder or something like that. And that crowd was just as rowdy as they could be. And that was fun. And, from everything that I've really heard about from the Seahawks games, and I've talked to a couple of reporters that were on the sidelines, they've never seen this crowd the way it was in Seattle. They haven't seen that since the early 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. Mike, were you going to say something? Oh, okay. So basically, we'll kind of recap on this game here, the Chargers game. And, again, Phillip Rivers, he had a good game. The interception at the end. Keith Tandy, and Mike, this is a question I have for you. I know you've really been in-depth with the Bucs. Why hasn't Keith Tandy gotten a lot of playing time? Any ideas, any thoughts on that?
I think it's just the role he fills. He's so good on special teams. I really don't know. I think a lot of it has to do with coaching changes. But the guy, I mean, when he gets in there, he makes plays. He finds a way to get always around the football. He doesn't start more or gets more playing time. I can't really answer that, but the role he's given, he does a great job. He's one of the special teams captains, and does a really good job when he's on the field. So, but I can't really answer why he doesn't get on there more. Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they came back and they won that game. Phillip Rivers threw the interception, and that was pretty much the end of the game. And that's how a defense is supposed to close out a game. And again, you almost have to go back to 2010, and maybe that's just a little bit of it, but that you have to almost go back there where you haven't seen that consistency of closing out games. I mean, I remember 2012 and the Philadelphia Eagles game when the Bucs had the game won, and pretty much, the offense had gotten off the field and the defense gave up the score. They gave up the game-winning score, and that was consistent for a long time. And it's good to see this defense being able to go in there and hold teams to protect those leads. So hopefully we'll see continued improvement, and with this Drew Brees team, which I'd like to go into. Do you guys have any final thoughts on the Chargers win?
Not that I can think of.
All right.
I'll just say one thing. Yeah, I'll say one thing on Jameis, just real quick. Last thing. Jameis, I mean, he makes players around him better, and that's, I mean, if you have that trait, I mean, you can be one of the greats like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. When you can make guys around you better.
Yeah, and a good example is Drew Brees. That guy, he comes in with subpar wide receivers, and he makes them look like Pro Bowlers, just because of the way he plays the game. And that's a Drew Brees. As much as I hate the Saints, I hate the Saints. And this is a guy that I have so much respect for because of what he can do at the quarterback position. And, everybody said he was too small when he came out, and just what he's able to do, clock management, scoring, just, protecting the ball. This guy is amazing. I know that, with age, he's kind of slowing down a little bit, but he's still making plays. And, I see him as a first ballot Hall of Famer.
I hope. I mean, like, for all the stuff we've had to put up with over the years with Drew Brees, I hope he gets in the first ballot Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I'm ready for him to retire. But let's talk about this game here. This is a big game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I feel like, honestly, where Atlanta and Tampa are right now, I think every game up till the end of the season is a big game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Would you all agree with that thought?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was looking at it after we won against San Diego, and I didn't go too far down this rabbit hole because it got complicated. But essentially, at this point, if we were both to win out, the Bucs and Falcons would be tied when it comes to divisional series record because we each have one loss to each other, and then we're tied against common opponents. We would I'm pretty sure. Let's see, the Falcons beat the Raiders. Who else? Denver, and then I forgot who else we lost to. But then we beat the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Seahawks, who I think the Falcons all lost to. So we're tied when it comes to that aspect. And so then I don't know where it goes from there. I don't know how it gets figured out from there. Do we get to the coin toss? I'm not sure. But since we're even when it comes to common opponents, we're even when it comes to divisional records, it's one of those things, if both the Falcons and Bucs win out, then it becomes just a head case. Good luck, Roger. I don't know what you're going to do.
I think that somehow I think Atlanta has the edge on us. I'm not sure how
it
that
goes
works.
To schedule or victory percentage, I would say it goes to. So the Falcons would have the edge. Yeah,
maybe depending on how well the other teams did throughout the rest of the season. Like, let's say we beat the Cowboys and we have that victory percentage, and then let's say the Raiders lose the rest of their games, Kansas City wins the rest of their who knows, man? It gets crazy.
Just need the Falcons to lose.
Yeah, exactly. They can just make everything simpler if they lose. No worries about any of this.
Yeah, I 200% agree. And, with the Falcons, is Julio Jones healthy? I know that he wasn't in for part of that game, so I wasn't sure how bad off he is.
He's got a turf toe, so
Ooh, that
not
is
100%.
Too. I'm here to tell you, that is painful. But he's a superstar. So you never know, he may go out there and play. So I want to get your keys to victory here. And I know that we've kind of had a consistent theme here. And in the beginning of the season, I don't know if you guys remember, Jameis Winston, and I had kind of harped on this a little bit. The turnovers that he had was putting the defense in a bad position, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. We've seen a lot better security with the ball from Jameis Winston. We've seen a lot better management as offensive management as a whole from Jameis Winston on the back end of the season. So that needs to continue in order to win against the New Orleans Saints. Another thing that's very important is stopping the run. This game right here is important because coming up we have some pretty huge games against big offensive line and running a real running game. So just getting prepared for that is very important. Pressure on the quarterback is going to be huge, and to me, with Drew Brees, that's what you have to do is keep him uncomfortable in the pocket. And I remember games before we had that long losing streak of I don't remember how many games against the Saints, but our defense was able to get to Drew Brees and make him uncomfortable in the pocket. So I've watched the games that he's lost, and that's been the big key right there is they've been able to get after him and put him in a position to where he either has to scramble or eat the ball or, whatever. He just can't scan the field and throw down the field, and that's what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to have to do. So to me, turnovers, we need to eliminate any turnovers on the offensive side of the ball. We need to make sure that the pass rush is getting pressure on the quarterback so he's not hadn't have a clean pocket and he's not comfortable. And another thing is our special teams. I think special teams is going to be huge in pinning him back and, if we have to, and making them have to work for everything they get. So, Mike, I'm going to start with you, and I want to get your keys to winning against the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be very similar. I think stopping the run is going to be, foremost, most important. If Brees and his offense can be two-dimensional, we're going to have a tough time stopping them. So we have to make them one-dimensional, stop the run. Mark Ingram and Tim Hightower are probably one of the better 1-2 combos in the league. So we have to find a way to shut them down. Got to tackle. And then my second key is going to be red zone offense. I think red zone, we got to be better. We have to score touchdowns. We can't settle for field goals. So I think red zone offense, we need to be a little bit more creative and find ways to get the ball in the end zone there. And then third key, I think, just protecting the football. We can't have turnovers. We got to get takeaways against Brees. So that's going to be critical. And, and then also ball control. I mean, we got to control the ball on offense. We got to run the football, get long drives. We got to get touchdowns out of them.
All right.
And then finally, I think pressure, just pressure up the middle.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm similar to Michael. I believe pressure is going to be number one. You guys have mentioned now letting Drew Brees have time, and that goes hand in hand with that. I do believe our secondary has looked good enough where if we give Drew Brees a little time, they'll be able to hang in there. But if you give Drew Brees too much time, that's going to end bad. Every single time it's going to end bad. So the pressure is necessary. Running game, I don't know if Mark Ingram's going to play. He didn't practice today, so that's hopeful. But, it's one of those things where Mark Ingram always seems like he's not practicing. So we'll see how that turns out. And so the running game, I'm not so worried about if Mark Ingram is out because I feel like that will get some pressure off of that front seven. And then the turnovers are key. But I think the Bucs have been able to take care of business the past few weeks. So it's not one of my keys to the game. There'll always be a key to a game, but it's not something I'm necessarily looking for because the Bucs have been able to do it. They've been able to get it done. But the red zone, and Michael, you mentioned this, scoring once we're in the red zone, that is important. Scoring touchdowns is even more important because, Aguayo went back to being inconsistent this last week, and I mentioned it earlier. I'm hoping. You hope for the best no matter what, but it's just one of those things where you wouldn't have to hope if you could get into the end zone. If we were scoring more touchdowns rather than relying on 35-yard field goals, it wouldn't be an issue when it came to whether or not Aguayo could hit them. So those are my main two things: is the pressure on Drew Brees and then scoring when in the red zone. I think if the Bucs can handle both of those things, then we'll be great. I mean, it'll be a good game. It'll be something that will help us propel us into next week against the Cowboys because that's gonna be a nervous one. That's gonna be a nervous one for me. Unfortunately, I won't be able to watch it. But if I were able to watch it, don't know if I'd be so calm during that game.
Yeah.
Don't be nervous. We're gonna win.
I saw an article from Real Bucs Talk, and they were talking about how people are talking about Doug Martin, and I just get really frustrated, and I know I really shouldn't. But it's just so annoying when people look at where the ball's going. They don't look at getting a first down. They don't look at – there are so many intangibles, and I know I use this word a lot, and I wish people would familiarize themselves with the word intangibles because there are a lot of things that Doug Martin does that our other running backs were unable to do, and unfortunately people don't see that. And I hear people talking about, we paid him all this money. You didn't pay him anything. The Bucs paid him all that money, and we need to just let this guy play and be as supportive as we can. So I wanted to talk to you about Doug Martin, because I'm glad to have Doug Martin back on the field. Despite what anybody else says, I'm glad he's back, and I think he's going to be a major factor. And you bring Charles Sims, who's coming back as well, and Jacquizz Rodgers, who's able to contribute. You've got some things that can happen here. So I wanted to get your thoughts on we've been talking about the running game, and we all agree that the running game is very important in beating the New Orleans Saints. So I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that.
Which you talking to?
Michael.
All right.
Because Michael did write. Did you write the article? Who wrote the article, Mark?
I'm not sure. I mean, I wrote plenty of articles on Doug Martin. I love the guy. So, I mean, Doug Martin just does so many things, like you were saying. I mean, whether it's pass protection, catching the ball out of the backfield, getting those tough physical yards that, not everyone can do. I mean, Doug Martin, I don't care what people say, he's one of the top 5 running backs in this league. The guy is outstanding. He's had some health concerns, but the things he does, especially behind an offensive line that is still young and still learning, and not one of the better offensive lines, but they fight hard as hell. But Doug Martin, he makes things happen. I mean, he makes people miss and gets so many yards after the contact. I mean, any criticism towards Doug Martin, I mean, fans just don't know what they're looking at. And then, Charles Sims and Jacquizz Rodgers are, great backs as well. So I think you're going to see probably a little bit more committee, but in the way, I think, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And, with Charles Sims coming back, I think that you'll be able to throw the ball out of the backfield a little bit more. That's going to stretch the defense out. They're not going to be able to crowd the box like they have been before. I think that's going to make a big difference.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they can split him out wide and, use him as a receiver, get those mismatches on the linebackers for sure. So, I even wrote something on Twitter. I think they need to put him and Martin in the backfield at the same time, use a little shotgun formation and, run them. You can do so many things that way. You can leave Martin in pass protection, let Sims go out for passes. So, more creative. So it's going to be exciting to see. Definitely Sims is one of our better playmakers, especially in open space.
And I want to read off one of the comments here from the chat. It's from Mark Ramirez. He says that you're very confident, and he's still a little worried about timing guys like Breeze. He said Ryan is the same type of quarterback, and he carved up the Bucs. He said, yes, the D has greatly improved since then, so this will be a great test. What are your thoughts to that?
Well, divisional games are always weird because you can say back in week 1 we were able to hold Ryan back, and when people thought the Falcons were just going to fall off the cliff at the first week of the season, people were thinking, all right, Falcons are not going to do anything this year. They got their butts handed to them by the Bucs. You fast forward a few weeks and they do the same to us. So divisional games shouldn't always be the milestone to whether or not predicting whether a defense is good or bad against certain kind of quarterbacks, because it's always a toss-up. However, the defense, I mean, you said it yourself, the defense has improved significantly since that game. We haven't lost since that game. And so that's when I think the real turning point was after that game. Drew Brees has had issues this season with his offensive line that I don't think Matt Ryan has had to deal with himself. I think the Saints offensive line is a little bit more, Swiss cheesy than we'll say the Falcons is. So that's an issue that Matt Ryan hasn't had to deal with. He's had a lot of time, and he's had Julio Jones. Drew Brees doesn't necessarily have a wide receiver like Julio Jones at the moment, which is great for our defense because we don't have a cornerback that really stands out in the same way that someone could cover Julio Jones. I remember in that game against the Falcons we lost, Hargreaves was on Julio Jones for the second half of that game when he really exploded. And while I have faith in Hargreaves, I never understood why we had a rookie covering one of the best wide receivers in the NFL.
But the pass rush wasn't even there really, to be very honest. I mean, Ryan had all day to throw the ball.
So, I mean, we've worked on the pass rush. I've seen it get better against the Chiefs, whose offensive line has to be good for Alex Smith. I mean, Alex Smith is just one of those quarterbacks who needs a good offensive line in order to be good himself. I'm not saying Alex Smith is a bad quarterback. It's just necessary for him. And against Russell Wilson, a mobile quarterback, the defensive, there was how many sacks that game? Too many to count, at least that I remember right now. 6. Jeeves got me. There were 6 sacks that game. So the improvement is there. It's just, I think it wasn't there at the right time for Matt Ryan in that second game we had against the Falcons. So I'm confident that there'll be more pressure on Drew Brees than there was on Matt Ryan. But I mean, I'm not saying we're gonna stop him. He's gonna have 120 yards passing. I mean, he'll probably still have at least 250 yards. But as long as we're able to get turnovers in the red zone, like we have the past few weeks, when they get to the red zone, if we keep them from scoring touchdowns, that's what's going to be helpful. And that's my spiel.
All right. Michael, your thoughts. I want you to respond.
Yeah, I would just say, the defense has changed. We're way more aggressive now. We're playing a more press man coverage where we're getting into receivers' faces. In the Falcons game, we played a lot of zone off coverage where we're giving those guys too much space, and Julio Jones was just taking advantage. I think now we're playing a more aggressive style where we're blitzing more. We're getting more pressure at the quarterback. So I think that's going to be the biggest difference. I think we're going to do our best to disrupt that timing that Drew Brees is so good at. We're going to get pressure up the middle and manage that.
Yeah, definitely. You bring up a great point. If you can get pressure on the quarterback, he has very little time to throw the ball. But, as Mark mentioned, this is a guy that's throwing to a spot. I mean, it's not like he's throwing on a route or anything like that. Mm-hmm. He's a timing guy. So, it's very important to get to the quarterback and disrupt this and make him uncomfortable. I mean, this guy, we've seen over the years what Drew Brees has continually come in and done to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when he's had time. And, as you mentioned, we have a healthy Robert Ayers. We have a healthy Clinton McDonald, Joe McCoy, Will Golston, who a guy that we haven't even mentioned, and I have to apologize for that because he's been balling. He balled last year. And unfortunately, he just hasn't gotten the exposure that he really deserves. I mean, he's a good run stopper too. So, we've got the weapons, and it's just a matter of going out there and executing. And you brought up an excellent point, Michael, when you were talking about how the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were so passive. They were not nearly as aggressive as what you've seen over the past 4 weeks. And I think that's what's really helped them because they've been able to go out there and hunt. They've been able to go and look for the quarterback. I look at Noah Spence and what Noah Spence has been able to do, how disruptive this guy is, and we haven't seen that for a long time. We thought we were going to get that with the Adrian Claiborne, and that just didn't with the injuries and just his abilities. And not to take anything away from him, he is playing over there in Atlanta, but he just wasn't I would say he wasn't the one, and, just seeing what we have now and what we could potentially be. I mean, it's really exciting. Just imagine a healthy Jacquez Smith in the mix with the rest of these guys.
That's dangerous.
Yeah. So, and one thing I know is Spence, the guy's playing at 240 right now. He said on his radio show last night. He's not even, stay. He's supposed to be up to 255, 260. For a guy to be playing, also with a bum shoulder too, pretty much playing with one arm. And just the way he's come out and just kept his motor kept going and just getting after the quarterback is outstanding.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah, it's scary good. I mean, he's going to be he's not even hit his potential yet.
Yeah. So, guys, what are your thoughts? I mean, Michael Thomas didn't practice, and I don't know if he's going to be able to play. I didn't see what his actual injury was, but how do you feel like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on offense match up against the New Orleans Saints?
Well, well, I think they match up really, really nicely because the New Orleans Saints defense is not known for playing defense. So when you have a wide receiver like Mike Evans, that can be a huge gain. And so, you still have some people you need to look out for in that secondary with that New Orleans has, but I think it's one of those things where one of those weeks where you could see Jameis Winston have a monster game and just not realize it, because it's one of those things where every single wide receiver is getting in there. I think that's what this game is going to be like. You're going to have a pass from every single wide receiver. You're going to have like 7 different names out there who have at least 30 yards, and it's going to be like, how did that happen? Well, you were marching down the field the entire time. That's how it happened. Whether or not we get into the end zone is a completely different matter, because it's been an issue we've had and we've discussed. But I think getting there won't be the issue. I think Doug Martin could have a breakout game. I'm a bit more critical of him than you guys are. I think he goes through spurts. I think we'll have a solid 5 games where Doug Martin is what you guys say he is, and then there's other games where it's just like you can see he has the potential, but something's holding him back, and I can't tell you what it is. Whether it's injury or not, it's still one of those things where it's not as productive as he could be. However, in this game, I think
I'm going to interrupt. I'm going to jump in there right where you're talking about right now. Remember back last year when Mike Evans was dropping passes, and Mike Evans wasn't the Mike Evans we saw his rookie season?
Oh, yeah, that was infuriating.
And I think there's some kind of, I don't want to say chemistry for Doug Martin, but there's something there that's kind of holding him back. He may not be 100%. He may have some other nicks that we don't know about, but there is something that's keeping him from being where he should be. And, again, I see the things that Doug Martin does away from the ball, and I can't be critical of him. He's a big part of this offense. And, when he gets going, it really helps Jameis Winston and it helps the rest of the team. Now, the fact that we have a healthy Charles Sims and we have Jacquizz Rodgers now, I think that's going to alleviate a little bit more pressure off of him. And I think you're going to see a different offense on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree. I'll go into, how we match up. And, I think we match up pretty well. Dennis Allen of the Saints, the defense coordinator, he likes to blitz a lot. So there's going to be heavy packages with a lot of blitzes. So we're going to have to be, on our toes as far as pass protection, making sure we have, everyone lined up and blocked. Match up pretty well. Their secondary is a weakness. I think that's something you can attack, especially with Mike Evans. I think whether he's going up against the young corner, I don't know how to pronounce his name, or the other guy, Sterling Moore, who's a former Buc. So I think we have an opportunity there to attack. I think their linebackers are kind of similar to how the Chargers linebackers are. They're kind of not overly athletic. I mean, they have some speed, but I think Cameron Brake can get some mismatches there where they can take advantage. So I think we match up well. We do have to pass protect. I think that's going to be the biggest thing, though. We have to make sure Jameis has time back there. Rushers, Cameron Jordan is still one of the best edge rushers in the game. They have Sheldon Rankins, who's coming on strong, who I loved. I thought the Bucs were going to take him in the draft.
Yeah, me too.
So he's really good. They got some playmakers back there, but again, their defense as a whole is not very strong because they just don't have the communication that they need to succeed. On the field. So they get out of position, so you can take advantage of that for sure.
Yeah, and this kind of goes back to my point where I talk about consistency. They went from Rob Ryan to who is the defensive coordinator?
Dennis Allen.
Dennis Allen, yeah. So, I mean, you had that kind of turmoil. And, again, after a while, eventually they will probably fix the defense. But you can see where consistency can definitely affect a team. Now, as far as Tampa goes, you see where these different players are really growing. Like we talked about Jameis Winston, and another guy that doesn't get the props he deserves is Mike Evans. And I know that there were so many people last season that wanted this guy out of here because of all the drops he was having. And just consider this: he had a bad season with 1,200 plus yards. And to me, he was just barely scratching the surface of his potential. I still don't think, and personally, just watching the game film, watching how he lines up, and some of the little nuances that there are to being a wide receiver, I still don't think he's figured all that stuff out, man. I still think his upside is huge going into his third professional season. So Mike Evans is continually improving and being the guy. I mean, you don't have Vincent Jackson on the other side of the field. You're the man. And just the fact that, he's been able to work out with Jameis Winston prior to the season, they have some kind of cohesiveness. And, you can see where Jameis Winston depends on him. You look at that touchdown, that 2-point conversion against the San Diego Chargers. That was amazing, man. That's a play that I don't think Mike Evans makes that play last year.
Oh, he doesn't. He doesn't.
Yeah, and just look at where he's at and how far advanced he is from last season. And, you got to be happy with where he is. And, he's a guy that I'd love to see him go to a Pro Bowl, man. That would be a good reward for all the stuff that he's done. I think that he's really helped this team. He's a huge part of this offense.
Yeah, you mentioned the drops, and I had an issue because he always dropped the easy ones, He somehow made like that crazy one-handed catch. You're like, I would not have faulted you for dropping that ball. But then when you're wide open on a 15-yard route, you go ahead and drop that ball. Oh, I'm pretty sure I had more tantrums over his drop balls than anything else that season, anything else in my life. Like, Mike Evans was the cause of all my pain with those drop balls, but I don't understand why people would be calling for him to leave. I mean, you could see the potential, and you mentioned that. You could see the potential he had. I mean, if you're able to catch those crazy one-handers, you're going to have to expect those easy ones are just going to come. Like, you're going to get to the point where you can catch the easy ones. So, I mean, him and Amari Cooper both have been able to come back from that a bit. Amari Cooper and him, I think Amari Cooper may have had one more drop ball, or at least they were tied. They were both out there. But both wide receivers have been able to come back from it. Maybe it was something in the water, but they've been able to get back. And it's been exciting to see because now I don't have to be angry at him every week, and it's a blessing. It's a blessing, you guys.
Yeah, and the nice thing, and kind of going back to Doug Martin, some players it just takes a little bit longer for them to come back from injuries, and again, we don't know 100% what's going on with Doug Martin. It could be something that's kind of lingering. But again, he's still able to come out there and contribute. I know his numbers do not look huge. Like right now, he's sitting at 313 yards rushing, and Jacquizz Rodgers has 422 yards rushing. So again, you see where if injury hadn't crept in, these are guys that could have made some huge plays and made bigger contributions, and who knows where we would be. But right now, I think this team is set up to be successful. They just need to go out and make plays and just approach every game like it's the only game that matters. And I think that you're seeing that right now. They're not like they were last year where you're reading your press clippings or anything like that. They're out there and they're trying to win these games. Each game is its own game, and you got to go out there and play it, and you go out there and play to win. And they are, having that mentality. They're expecting to win. Mm-hmm. So I want to go around, and I'm going to start with you, Terra, this time. And who would you give your game ball to for this San Diego Chargers Buccaneers game?
You mentioned him briefly with the momentum interception, and I'm going to go with Levante David because that was a huge interception, and he played well throughout the game. Levante David is a great player, and we've talked about how he's underrated before. Both of our linebackers are Quan Alexander and Levante David. And so, but there's also a couple times during the game where I'm normally like, oh, Levante took the wrong cut on that, but I'm not going to blame him. I didn't have that with the Chargers. I thought he played an excellent game, including that interception, so I'm going Levante.
Hello? Gene?
We have lost our host.
All right. Well, I'll go with my game ball. I mean, I think I'm going to give it to Dirk Cutter. I think Dirk Cutter and his coaching staff deserve it. I think he, came out with an excellent game plan against a great team. I mean, you look at this Chargers team; they're very talented. With a Philip Rivers, and he's tough to beat in San Diego. So, get a win up there, I thought was awesome, and I thought it was a great game plan overall. I thought the adjustments he made in the second half were outstanding. So, game ball to Dirk Cutter.
No, you're right. I was upset you got to analyze the second half and not me, because the game time adjustments were great in that half. Every issue I had with the first half, except maybe scoring in the red zone, was rectified in the second half. So it was one of those things where it was definitely great halftime adjustments by Dirk. Do we have Gene back yet?
Gene.
Like
Gene gone.
Oh, all right. Oh, yeah, he's gone. He left the group chat. He left us. All right, this is our show. Well, I mean, you got anything else? Chargers, Saints concerned? Bucs related, obviously.
I mean, going into the Saints game, I look at it. I hope this team has just learned their lesson from last year. I think, you go back to last year, we were 6-6, and you had a pretty much winnable stretch in those final 4 games, and you just lay a stinker against the Saints at home. And I hope that's resonating with this team. I'm hoping they can just find a way to start out fast, bring that energy, and kind of like how they did against Seattle, where they just come out of the gates, really put it to the Saints. So, I think if we do that, I think we have a chance where they're going to probably give up a little bit, because this is it for the Saints. I mean, if they win this game, they're right back in it. So it's a huge game for the Saints, and I think if we can get that momentum early, I think that's going to help us out pretty good.
Yeah, you're right. Especially when you look at that 6-6 season and what happened. And I'm looking at the schedule we have. We have the Saints twice, Cowboys, and we have Saints, Cowboys, Saints, Panthers. And so realistically, I'm thinking the worst case scenario is we only get 2 wins out of those 4. But then I remember what you just mentioned with the whole 6-6 season. I'm like, no, worst case scenario is we drop all 4. So I think, and you and Gene both mentioned it with the expecting to win rather than hoping to win. And with that in mind, I think, again, it goes back to worst case scenario being 2 out of those 4. Because you get 1 against the Saints. I'm going to say maybe we give up 1 against the Saints too. And maybe we lose to Dallas and then win again against the Panthers. That puts us at 9-7 on the season, worst case scenario in my mind. And, that's way better than I would have thought, especially after last season. And I'm just, it's a great position to be at. It's a great position to be at this season, and it's a great position going forward. So I'm looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I predicted 8 wins. I thought, 8 wins for, new coaching staff, pretty young team. I thought pretty good, and they're right there. I mean, you win this week, you're right. You attain that goal. So, just for this team, you can just see it. Everything's just changing for the better. This team has the right mindset finally. Jameis he's taken over of this team and instilling that winning attitude, which we need. It's great to have. And finally, hopefully, you can keep everything together, keep the consistency, which would be awesome. But big weekend. I'm looking forward to it. I hope Raymond James is going to be packed. Unfortunately, I won't be able to be there, but I hope the fans show up and we rock the place like we did against Seattle, and hopefully get a big win Sunday. It's going to be awesome for sure.
Yeah, it will be. Unfortunately, I won't be able to be there either, but it's a 3,000-mile trip for me, so maybe next one. So yeah, I mean, if that's it for you, that's it for me.
All right. All right. Yeah.
But see you guys later.
All right. Good night.